19 missed calls. That's what I woke up to at 1:58 a.m. on a Thursday morning in February 2026, in a bunk trailer at a pipeline work camp outside Broadwater, Montana, 5 hours from home. 19 missed calls. All from my wife. All between 1:10 a.m. and 1:52 a.m. 42 minutes of my phone buzzing against a metal shelf while I slept through it. Because I'd spent 16 hours walking a trench line in 20-degree wind. And my body had done what bodies do when they've been asked for more than they have it shut down completely. Without asking permission. Deaf to everything. Including a woman who needed me to pick up. The last text from her. Sent at 1:02:35 a.m. said, "Don't come home tonight." The text before that, sent at 7:40 p.m., said, "Running late. Stay safe. Love you." Between love you and don't come home, 4 hours and 55 minutes. Something had happened in those hours. Something that turned my wife from a woman who signed off with love you into a woman telling me to stay away. I called her back. No answer. I called again. No answer. Third try. Voicemail, her voice. Recorded calm. A version of her from some ordinary Sunday 2 years ago who had no idea her husband would someday be listening to it at 2 in the morning. Trying to understand why she'd called him 19 times and then just stopped. I got in my truck, not the crew rig. Me own. A 2021 Toyota Tundra. I'd driven out to the site and parked beside the equipment trailers, and I pulled onto the 2-lane highway heading south toward Bristow Falls. 5 hours. 310 miles. The longest drive of my life. I didn't put the radio on. Just the engine. The tires. And the sound of a man breathing like he's trying very hard to stay calm and losing that fight 1 mile marker at a time. I called her 6 more times on the drive. Nothing. I called our daughter's tablet. The one she used for messages. Nothing. I called our son's phone. Nothing. 3 lines. 0 answers. And the distance between Broadwater and Bristow Falls shrinking, while the distance between what I knew and what had actually happened just kept growing. I turned onto Sorrel Ridge Lane at 6:58 a.m. and stopped the truck in the middle of the street, because I physically could not make myself drive any closer at first. 4 squad cars. Lights still turning. Red and blue washing over the neighbors' fences. An ambulance backed into our driveway. Yellow tape strung across the porch I'd built with my own hands 3 summers ago. Where my daughter read her library books and my son practiced chords on a guitar he was still bad at, and my wife drank coffee every Saturday while I mowed the lawn in lazy diagonal stripes. Tape across my porch. I got out and walked toward the house on legs that seemed to be operating independently of my brain. Because my brain had stopped processing new information about 4 minutes earlier. A young officer, maybe 26, stepped in front of me. He had the look of a man who'd been standing outside a scene for 6 hours and hadn't yet learned how to arrange his face into something neutral. "Sir, you can't go in there. That's my house." "Are you the husband?" "Yes, I'm the husband." "Where's my wife? Where are my kids?" He glanced back at his partner, an older woman standing near the door. And he said something to her. Not to me. Quietly. The way people talk when they think you can't hear them. But I was 3 feet away. And my ears, at least, still worked. He has no idea what she just did. 6 words. 6 words that contained an entire night. I hadn't lived through a war I didn't know had been fought in my own kitchen. And a woman I thought I knew doing something I never would have believed she was capable of. "What did she do?" I said. "Where is she? Is she hurt? Are my kids hurt?" "Sir, your wife is inside. She's not injured. Your children are safe. They're upstairs with a caseworker. The older officer walked over. Her name tag read dates. Maybe 45. With the steady eyes of someone who'd worked enough scenes to know that the man standing in front of her needed facts more than he needed procedure. Mr. Halloran, your wife and children are safe. At approximately 12:58 this morning, two men forced entry through your back door. Your wife confronted them. She discharged a firearm. One of the intruders sustained a gunshot wound. Both men have been detained. Your wife is being interviewed, but she is not under arrest. She's being treated as a victim. Two men broke into my house. Yes, sir. And my wife shot one of them. Yes, sir. My wife. June. The science teacher. Yes, sir. I think you should go inside now. I ducked under the tape. The kitchen had become a different room entirely. The back door, the one that opened onto the deck I'd built, the year our son turned 9, hung off one hinge. The frame split like kindling. Little yellow evidence markers stood on the tile in a pattern I didn't want to understand. Marker 1, a pry bar near the threshold. Marker 2, a spent shell casing by the pantry. Marker 3, a dark smear near the base of the island. Not a pool. Just a smear, the blood of a man who had broken into my house and been shot by my wife. My wife, June, was on the living room couch. A blanket around her shoulders. A mug of tea in her hands that she wasn't drinking. A detective sat across from her, taking notes. Her face, I don't have the right word for it. Not scared. Not exactly. Depleted. The face of someone who has spent every ounce of adrenaline and every year of training she never mentioned to anyone, and has just enough left to sit upright and hold a mug. She saw me, and her whole face came apart. Emmett. She was up and across the room before I finished saying her name. Both arms locked around my chest. Her forehead pressed into my collarbone. Holding on the way, you hold something that was almost taken and wasn't. They came for you, she said into my shirt. They came for you. And you weren't here. And I couldn't let them wait for you to get home. Who came for me, June? What happened? I'll tell you everything. But first, go upstairs. See the kids. They heard all of it. They need to see your face. I went up. My daughter Wynn's room first. She's 9, and she was sitting cross-legged on her bed with a woman in a Bristow Falls PD windbreaker talking to her in the low, careful voice. Caseworkers use with kids who've just lived through something no kid should live through. Wynn saw me in the doorway and launched off the bed with the force of a child who's been holding herself together for 6 hours through sheer willpower. Which is impressive in a 9-year-old, but not infinite. Daddy, I'm here. Baby, I'm here. Mommy shot the bad man. I know. She told me to hide in the bathroom and not make a sound. She said call 911 if I heard the gun. So I called. I told them there were bad men in the house, and my mommy had a gun. They said help was coming, and I stayed on the phone until I heard the sirens. I held my daughter, a 9-year-old who had crouched behind a locked bathroom door, listened to her mother fire a rifle, and dialed for help with the precision of a kid who'd been given instructions and trusted them because her mother had taught her that instructions matter when it counts. You did so good. Win. So good. Is Mom okay? Mommy's okay. She's downstairs talking to the police. She was really brave. I know she was. My son Bodie, 12, was in his own room, sitting on the floor with his back against the bed frame, knees pulled to his chest, arms wrapped around his shins, not crying, staring at the wall with the flat, used-up look of a kid who's processed more in one night than his nervous system knows how to file. So it's defaulted to the only setting left, which is stillness. Hey, Dad. You okay? Bud. Mom told me to take Win to the bathroom and lock the door and not come out no matter what I heard. I wanted to go down and help her. She said no. She said my job was to protect Win. So I did that instead. That was exactly right. Bodhi. I heard the gun go off. Dad. And then a man screaming. And then Mom's voice. She said, "Don't move, or I'll fire again." And the screaming stopped. I sat down next to my son on the floor, put my arm around him, and we didn't talk for a while. Because sometimes the only thing a father can do is be a wall his kid can lean against, while the world puts itself back together. Before I tell you why two men broke into my house at 1 in the morning, before I get into the safety complaint, and the trenching subcontractor, and the $4.7 million contract, and the chain of events that turned a routine OSHA report into an attempted murder, I need to tell you about my wife. Because the woman sitting downstairs with a blanket around her shoulders was not the woman I thought I'd married 15 years ago. She was something else entirely. And the gap between who I believed she was and who she actually is turned out to be the gap between a woman who grades spelling tests at the kitchen table and a woman who can sit in a dark house for 4 straight hours with a loaded rifle. Waiting. My name's Emmett Halloran. I'm 44. I'm a field supervisor for Timberline Energy Constructors. Based out of Bristow Falls, Montana, I run crews building compressor stations and pipeline infrastructure across the western part of the state. I've spent my whole adult life underground and in trenches, making sure the ground doesn't come down on the men working in it. My wife is June Halloran, 41, 3rd grade teacher at Meadow Creek Elementary, on the north side of town. She teaches kids their multiplication tables and how to raise a hand instead of shouting out an answer. She wears cardigans. She owns maybe a dozen. All soft. All in muted colors. She drinks chamomile tea before bed. She keeps a jar of stubby-colored pencils on her desk and a photo of our family on the shelf behind her. And a sign above her whiteboard, painted by her students, that says, "Be kind." That's who I thought she was. A teacher. A mother. A woman whose most dangerous possession was a glue gun. I was wrong. June grew up in Wolf Creek County, Montana, if you don't know it. It's tucked deep in the Bitterroot backcountry. And it is, by every metric the state keeps, the poorest county in Montana, which puts it near the bottom nationally, too. It was timber country once, before the mill shut down and left behind the hollow and the houses, and the people who couldn't afford to leave. June grew up in a settlement called Widow Creek. No relation to our surname. A coincidence she found funny when we met, and I found, at the time, kind of romantic. Her father was Amos Teller, a logger who'd worked the backcountry mills until the last one closed in 1998. And who spent the rest of his working life the way unemployed loggers in Wolf Creek County did, trapping, guiding elk hunters into the high country, fixing whatever needed fixing. He raised June alone starting when she was 7. After her mother, Adeline, packed a duffel bag one October and drove to Spokane and never came back. No custody fight. No divorce filing. Just absence. Amos Teller was not a gentleman. He was shaped by a hard place. And he raised his daughter to survive it. He taught her to shoot when she was 12. Not for sport. For the same reason people in that hollow learned a lot of things, because the nearest sheriff's response was 50 minutes out on a good day. And longer when the road's iced. By the time help gets here. He used to tell her, whatever's going to happen has already happened. So you decide what happens. He taught her on his Marlin 336. A lever action, 30-30 he'd carried since before she was born. The same rifle that was now sitting in an evidence bag in a Bristow Falls PD property room. He taught her to load it fast, to hold it steady, to clear a room, not the tactical way soldiers do it, but the way a man from the backcountry does it, slow, quiet, with the patience of someone who knows that if you're still enough, the thing you're waiting for will come to you. June left Widow Creek at 18 on a partial scholarship to the University of Montana, got her education degree, got her teaching license, moved to Bristow Falls, and built a life that was about as far from that hollow as she could get without leaving the state. Cardigans instead of camo, storybooks instead of a game trail. She became the teacher, the mother, the woman with the Be Kind sign because that's who she wanted to be. Not necessarily who she'd been trained to be. She kept her father's rifle. It lived in a locked case at the back of our bedroom closet. I knew it was there. I assumed it was sentimental, a keepsake from a father who was gone. Amos died in 2019, caught in a slide while guiding a hunting party through an early season storm. And June had brought the rifle home from the estate the way you bring back a watch or a wedding band, an object that stands in for a person. Not a tool with a function. I never once asked if she knew how to use it. It never occurred to me to ask. She was a third-grade teacher. Third-grade teachers don't use rifles, except when they do. Let me walk you through the night. Because you need to understand what happened in the gap between 7:40 p.m. when my wife texted "love you" and 1258 a.m. when she racked a lever-action rifle in the dark and waited for two men to come through her back door at 7:35 p.m. on Wednesday, February 11th. Liaotianling Arshaliu. June was in the kitchen finishing dinner. Bodhi was upstairs doing homework. Win was at the table, drawing horses. The doorbell rang. A man stood on the porch, mid-30s. Work jacket. A face she didn't recognize. He wasn't aggressive. He was calm. In the specific way of someone delivering a message he's rehearsed. Mrs. Halloran. Yes? Your husband's Emmett Halloran, field supervisor for Timberline. Who's asking? 2 months ago, your husband filed a safety complaint against Ashworth Trenching. It triggered an OSHA investigation. They found violations. Ashworth lost a $4.7 million state contract. The owner, Corbin Ashworth, is now facing criminal negligence charges. I don't know what you're talking about. Your husband's report cost people a lot of money and put a man on track for prison. Sometime after midnight tonight, 2 men are coming to this house. He said it the way you'd read a weather forecast. Then he turned and walked back to a truck parked down the block and drove off. And June stood in the doorway of our house holding the knowledge that men were coming for her husband. And her husband was 310 miles away at a work camp with no fence and no gate, and no way for her to protect him there. She didn't call the police. She told me later exactly why. In a conversation we had 3 days after. I'll get to that. What she did instead was, send me the love you text. So I wouldn't panic and drive straight into whatever was waiting. She sent Bodhi and Win up to bed early. She locked every door in the house except the one she knew they'd try, the back door. The weakest one. The one with the old frame that had needed replacing for 2 years. She unlocked the case in the closet. She loaded the Marlin. And she went and sat in the dark kitchen behind the island, where she had a clean line to the back door, and the streetlight outside would silhouette anyone coming through it while she stayed invisible. She sat there for over 4 hours. A 2:35 m. With the warning weighing on her and midnight already past. She sent me the second text. Don't come home tonight. Not a plea. A commande. She told me later she almost added more, almost explained, and then didn't. Because if I'd known the truth, I'd have gotten in the truck immediately. And the last thing she wanted was her husband walking blind into a house with 2 armed men in it. A 2:35 m. The back door gave. Splintered wood. A crowbar clattering against the frame. And a man's shape stepping into the kitchen in the dark. Get on the floor. June said. Her voice, she told me later, surprised her with how steady it was. She'd expected to shake. She didn't. It was the same stillness her father had drilled into her 30 years earlier in a hollow that didn't wait for anyone. Be stiller than the thing you're hunting, he used to say. If you're still enough, it comes to you. The first man later identified as Dutch Ferris. 37. A known associate of Corbin Ashworth's didn't get on the floor. He rushed the sound of her voice, gambling that a woman alone in a dark kitchen couldn't possibly be holding a weapon she knew how to use. He gambled wrong. June fired once. The round caught him in the shoulder and put him down, screaming on the tile. The report of a rifle fired indoors runs somewhere near 140 decibels louder than a jet engine at close range. The windows rattled. Dishes shifted in the cupboard. And upstairs, two children who'd been listening in the dark followed exactly the instructions their mother had given them. The second man, Sonny Brake, 29, froze in the broken doorway. His partner was down and screaming, and a woman's voice from behind the kitchen island said 5 words that would later be replayed in a federal courtroom. Don't move. I'll shoot again. He didn't move. Because the difference between a bluff and a promise is the sound of a lever action being worked a second time in the dark. And Sonny Brake heard that sound and understood, all the way down, that the woman behind the island meant it. Upstairs, Bodie had already pulled Wynne into the bathroom and locked the door. Wynne called 911. There's bad men in our house. My mommy has a gun. Please send someone. The dispatcher, a woman named Louetta Sims who'd worked the line for 19 years, later told a reporter it was the calmest call she'd ever taken from a child. Wynne gave the address, the number of people in the house, told them her mother had fired the rifle, all of it at 9 years old, sitting on cold tile with her 12-year-old brother, gripping her other hand while a man screaming leaked up through the floor. Police arrived at 1:05 a.m., 7 minutes after the shot. They found one man on the kitchen floor bleeding from the shoulder, conscious. One man standing in the broken doorway with his hands raised, not moving a muscle. And one woman, June Halloran, 41, third-grade teacher at Meadow Creek Elementary, sitting on a kitchen chair behind the island, the marlin across her lap, still pointed at the doorway, as steady as the granite countertop above her. Mum, you can put the weapon down. Not until they're cuffed. Ma'am, cuff them first. Then I'll put it down. They cuffed Dutch Ferris on the floor and Sonny Brake in the doorway. Only then did June set the rifle on the counter, stand up, and have her legs give out under her. An officer caught her before she hit the tile. How long were you sitting there? Mom, 4 hours. You have training. My father taught me. Is your father here? My father's been dead 7 years. He was a logger in Wolf Creek County. He taught me because the sheriff was 50 minutes out and the hollow didn't have time to wait for anybody. That's when June started calling me. 19 calls between 1:10 a.m. once the scene was secured, and 1:52 a.m. when she finally let the phone go to voicemail. She wasn't calling to tell me what had happened. She was calling because the adrenaline was leaving her body and the stillness was going with it. And the woman who just sat in the dark for 4 hours with a loaded rifle needed to hear her husband's voice, to know that the entire reason she'd done any of it, loaded the gun, warned the kids, waited in the dark for the sound of boots on the deck, was alive and safe. And 300 miles away, in a bunk trailer outside Broadwater, I didn't answer because I was asleep, because I'd walked a trench line for 16 hours, because the phone was on a metal shelf and my body had checked out completely. 19 calls. 19 times my wife reached for me, and I wasn't there. He has no idea what she just did. That's what the officer said to his partner when I finally arrived. And he was right. I had no idea about the men. No idea about the rifle. No idea about 4 hours in the dark. Or my daughter calling 911 from a bathroom floor. Or my wife, the teacher. The cardigan. The chamomile tea sitting behind our kitchen island with a loaded lever-action rifle. Stopping 2 men who'd come to hurt me with skills her dead father had taught her in a Montana hollow 3 decades earlier. What I had even less idea about what I wouldn't learn for another 2 weeks was why they'd come. The investigation moved fast because it wasn't just local. Bristow Falls PD worked it alongside the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. Since the break-in tied directly into a federal OSHA case, here's what they found. 2 months before that, February night. Back in December, I'd filed a safety complaint against Ashworth Trenching, a subcontractor working excavation on a compressor station project. I was supervising outside Deer Lodge. Ashworth's crew was cutting corners on trench, shoring, running supports, rated for half the load they were actually bearing. I'd flagged it twice on site. They ignored me. I filed the report because that's what a field supervisor does when a subcontractor is going to get somebody killed. And because an unshored trench doesn't collapse politely, OSHA confirmed the violations. Ashworth Trenching lost its $4.7 million contract with the state. The owner, Corbin Ashworth, 55, was charged with criminal negligence. Ashworth didn't blame OSHA, or the inspectors, or his own corner cutting. He blamed me. He didn't come to my house himself. He sent Dutch Ferris and Sonny Brake. But first he sent a messenger. Cole Ambrose, 33, one of his own employees, to deliver the warning and make sure the house would be empty when his men arrived. He assumed a schoolteacher would follow instructions and clear out. He had no idea about Wolf Creek County, no idea about Amos Teller, or the hollow, or the rifle in the closet, or the girl who'd learned to hold a room steady before she'd learned to parallel park. Corbin Ashworth was arrested in early March federal charges for conspiracy to commit assault, witness intimidation, and obstruction of a federal investigation. Ferris and Brake were charged with breaking and entering, attempted assault, and conspiracy. Cole Ambrose, the messenger, was picked up through a neighbor's doorbell footage and, facing his own conspiracy and witness intimidation charges, agreed to cooperate and testify about Ashworth's instructions. All 3 await trial. The case moves the way federal cases move slowly, but it moves. 3 days after that night, once the tape was gone and the door had been rehung and the tile had been scrubbed clean, and our house was a house again instead of a crime scene, June and I finally had the real conversation. Why didn't you call the police the moment he left? I asked. Because he said if I called, they'd find you at the site. Deer Lodge has no fence, no gate. Anyone can walk onto that job. I couldn't protect you out there. I could protect you here. You could have called me, told me everything, and you'd have done what? I'd have driven straight home. Exactly. 5 hours. Straight through whatever was waiting on the other side of that door. And then it's not one of us against 2 men, it's 2 of us. Plus our kids. Plus them. And I can't control any of it anymore. If you're not here, I control the room. I know the house. I know every sightline in it. I know where the kids are. I know where the gun lives. I know exactly where to sit, so anyone coming through that back door is lit up by the streetlight while I'm sitting in the dark. I know all of that because my father made sure I'd know it. In a hollow where the sheriff was 50 minutes out, and the only thing standing between me and whatever was coming was me. June, you sat in the dark for 4 hours. Yes. With a rifle. Yes. You're a teacher. She looked at me the look of a woman who's been seen one way for 15 years and is about to let you see the other way. I'm a teacher because I chose to be a teacher. I grew up in Widow Creek. My father raised me alone in that hollow. My mother left when I was 7. The nearest deputy was 50 minutes out on a clear day. My father taught me to shoot at 12 because he understood a girl growing up alone out there needed to be her own first responder. You never told me any of this. I told you I grew up in the Montana backcountry. I never told you I could handle a rifle. Why not? Because I didn't want to be that girl anymore. Emmett. I left Widow Creek because I wanted to be something else, the teacher. The mom. The woman who has a porch and a lawn and colored pencils in a jar. I didn't want to be the girl who can clear a room with a lever action. I wanted to be the woman who never has to be her. But you kept the rifle. I kept it because my father gave it to me. And because he taught me one thing I never forgot. You can choose who you want to be. But don't forget who you already know how to be. I chose to be a teacher. But when 2 men broke through my back door to hurt my kid's father, I remembered exactly who I know how to be. The girl from the hollow. I looked at my wife, this woman I'd married 15 years earlier. Shared roughly 5,400 nights with, watched grade spelling tests at our kitchen table in cardigans while a Be Kind sign hung over her desk at school. She had sat in that same kitchen, in the dark, for 4 hours, with a loaded rifle, waiting for 2 men who'd come to kill me. She'd fired the round that stopped one of them. She'd held the other at gunpoint until help arrived. She'd prepared our children for the worst night of their lives with the same calm, methodical precision her father had drilled into her 3 decades before I ever met her. And she'd never told me, not because she was hiding something, but because becoming someone new means leaving pieces of your old self behind and hoping you never have to go back for them. She went back for them on the night of February 11th. She went back to Widow Creek. Back to the girl who could sit still and wait and outlast the thing hunting her family. Because the alternative, letting 2 men walk through her door to hurt the people she loved, was never something June Halloran was built to allow. It's April now. A little over 2 months since that night. The back door's been replaced. The tile's been cleaned. The evidence markers are long gone. Police returned the Marlin after ballistics confirmed self-defense. And it's back in the closet, but it's not locked in its case anymore. It sits on a shelf. Loaded. In reach. Because the woman who used to keep it as a sentimental keepsake now keeps it as what it always was, a tool. And the husband who once assumed it was just a memento of a dead father now understands it was always his wife's quiet way of saying, even when she never said it out loud, I'm ready for whatever comes through that door. Bodie sees a counselor every week. He's working through the night the way 12-year-old boys work through things in bursts of anger he can't name and silences he doesn't know how to fill. Last week he told me he wants to learn to shoot. I told him we'd talk about it when he's older. He said, Mom was 12 when Grandpa taught her. I didn't have a good answer for that. Because he wasn't wrong. Winds bounce back, with the particular resilience 9-year-olds have. She's folded the night into how she understands the world and kept moving. The way kids do when they still fundamentally trust the adults around them. She drew a picture last week. A woman standing in a kitchen holding something long, a broom. Or a rifle. Depending how you tilt it. Above the woman, in crayon, "My mum is brave." It's on our fridge now. Next to the grocery list, and a permission slip for a field trip. Sitting among the ordinary artifacts of a family that goes to school and eats too much mac and cheese and, on one night in February, found out that the quietest person in the house was also the strongest one in the room. I filed that safety report because men were working under shoring that wouldn't hold. The report cost a man his contract and got him federal charges. In return, he sent 2 men to my house to hurt me, and my wife, the teacher. The mother. The girl from the hollow stopped them cold. I protected my crew. She protected me. Her father protected her. Our daughter protected herself. Alone on a bathroom floor with a phone and a steady voice. A whole chain of protection passed down from a logger in Wolf Creek County to a school teacher in Bristow Falls to a 9-year-old girl calling 911 without her voice shaking once. That's what this family does. Apparently hard hats and safety reports and lever-action rifles and 911 calls. Whatever the night happens to demand, I want to ask you something. What would you do if your spouse texted you at midnight? Don't come home tonight. And you had no idea those 4 words were the most loving thing they'd ever said to you, not pushing you away, but pulling danger toward themselves so it never reached you. And here's the harder question underneath that one. Do you actually know the person you married? Not the version that makes coffee and grades papers and wears the same soft cardigan every Tuesday. The other version. The one that shows up at 1 in the morning when the back door splinters. And the only thing standing between your kids and the men who came for their father is a woman alone in the dark with her father's rifle. Because here's what I've learned. You don't just marry a person. You marry a childhood. A history. A set of skills forged somewhere you've never been. By a parent you never met. And sometimes, on the worst night of your life, that history comes out of a closet with a loaded rifle and saves your family. Don't come home tonight. 4 words. The bravest sentence anyone has ever said to me, not because she was afraid, but because she wasn't. She was ready. Tell me what you'd do in the comments. I read every one. If any part of this hit you somewhere you didn't expect. The dark kitchen. The 4 hours. The girl from the hollow. Hit like and share it with someone who thinks they already know the person they married. You might be right. Or you might be married to someone from Wolf Creek County who's got her father's rifle in a closet and hasn't told you why yet. She'll tell you when it matters. And when she does, you'll understand everything. Comment your thoughts below. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one.